Today you're in for a treat. We have a very special guest from a company that you all heard about, Levi Strauss. He's going to share how they transformed Excel-based supply planning using Boardwalk. Today's speakers are Miguel Chen, Global Application Manager at Levi Strauss. He has over 30 years experience in IT. Some of his focus areas are supply chain, demand planning, inventory management, and logistics. He also enjoys outdoor activities such as hiking, bicycling, and traveling. Then we have Boardwalk Tech's Vice President of the Boardwalk App Engine Group, Vivek Kumar. He has over 15 years of industry experience ranging from manufacturing, supply chain, ERP implementation, and IT consulting. He has a degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA in strategy, system, and marketing. Some of his hobbies include behavioral economics and management, cosmology, and table tennis. So the way we've structured the session today is that we'll start off with a high-level overview to the Boardwalk App Engine. We'll also tell you a little bit about the Boardwalk value proposition. Then we'll hand it over to our star of the show, Miguel, so he can share his experience with Boardwalk. Then we'll show you some various applications that have been deployed not only by the apparel industry, but by various other industries. We'll tell you a little bit about how Boardwalk works. Then we'll save some time at the end for a live demo. And then save some time at the end for Q&A as well. So if you have any questions at all, please submit them in the side panel, and we will get to them at the end of the session. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Vivek.
Thank you, Heather, and a very warm welcome to all of you. We have a lot of ground to cover and very interesting information to share. So let's get started without further ado. So very quickly, a very high-level introduction to Boardwalk Application Engine. So Boardwalk Application Engine is rapidly used to build enterprise applications that replace and enhance manual Excel processes. As you will see, we use Excel as our user interface and as the front end. And with that, we allow your Excel templates to be shared not only within your organization, but you can share it also with outside entities like your vendors, contract manufacturers, suppliers, etc., without the need to email the file or upload the file in some SharePoint, etc. We also enable your Excel to get connected to your enterprise information system. So as, say, for example, information evolves in different applications and different corners of your enterprise, with a click of a button, you can see those changes seamlessly flowing into these templates. And we will cover many aspects of these into our in our sessions today and later in our demo as well. Now, the next few slides kind of speaks to the broad range appeal of the platform. As you can see, we have customers in multiple industries and verticals, and each of these companies have been leveraging Boardwalk in their own unique way. One point which I want to highlight is that Boardwalk is not a point solution. It is a platform, and because it is a platform, it can be configured to very specific needs of individual organizations. Now, say for example, in this slide, we are trying to depict, how some of our customers are leveraging our tool. For example, we have organizations like PricewaterhouseCoopers, which are in, say, for example, the financial services domain, and they have built an entire taxation engine on Boardwalk, where we have more than 3,000 Pricewaterhouse tax consultants who prepare the private equity tax and partnership taxes on Boardwalk. Then, in the consumer electronics space, we have organizations like Apple. Incidentally, Apple has built more than 10, 12 applications on Boardwalk over the last year and a half. And they are using us very heavily in the areas of supply chain, in inventory management, operations management, etc. Then in the consumer packaged good industry, we have companies like Heineken, Coke, Welch's. And again, these organizations too have developed multiple applications using our product. And say, for example, some of the applications which they are leveraging are ranging from some pricing applications to joint business planning to trade promotions. Then in manufacturing, we have organizations like Rockwell Automation, which has built a very detailed, comprehensive account management application on us, where more than 2,000 distributors of Rockwell across the globe, they are leveraging our product to manage and capture growth and account management on Boardwalk. Then again, in the healthcare industry, we have organizations like Merck and Teva, which are leveraging our platform. And then in high-tech industries, we have companies like Qualcomm, Brocade, again, who are using us for multiple applications developed on our platform. So the bottom line, which I want you all to take from this slide, is that we are absolutely process agnostic. We are industry and vertical agnostic. So any process which you can model in Excel, more or less you can leverage Boardwalk application engine to streamline and automate these processes. Now, we have been in business for over a decade now, and having worked with many of the Fortune 500,000 companies, what we see is that even though organizations have spent, they have spent tens of millions of dollars, or many times even hundreds of millions of dollars on state-of-the-art ERP, CRM application, there are still, plethora of, processes where these organizations continue to leverage Excel, and we believe that there are very strong reasons why business users are kind of attracted to using Excel as an application. However, even though companies do use Excel primarily in many of these areas, recently there was a study done where, again, in these Fortune 500 companies, almost 70% of the respondents said that they leverage Excel for many of their critical business processes as well. Now, though organizations continue to use Excel, we see that there are a lot of gaps associated with these Excel-based processes. And this is where Boardwalk, with its patented technology, is able to help these organizations overcome many of these challenges in Excel processes, which I'll cover a little later in my slide. So coming to what are the challenges associated, say, for example, with these Excel-based processes. So what I'm showing here on my screen is that the time, effort, and resources required to manage these Excel-based processes as certain parameters, for example, as the number of people who are participating in these Excel processes, or as the number of regions you need to collaborate with, or the number of cycles or iterations which you need to do. As these starts to increase, then there are, the problems associated with Excel gets kind of compounded. So, for example, if you look at, the lag which are associated with these Excel-based processes, because they are extremely manual in nature, you see that as some of the parameters which I'm showing on my x-axis, as they start to increase, the process lag in these applications starts to increase exponentially. And so does the coordination effort which is required in managing these Excel processes. They also start to kind of increase quite rapidly. Then, because your Excel is not typically connected to any of your enterprise information system, the data accuracy, because by the time you extract that data from some ERP system or any other homegrown tool, you need to do some amount of ETL operation, data massaging, etc. So typically by the time that data comes into your Excel spreadsheet, it is already dated. So the accuracy of the data, many times we see when we work with these organizations, is that is not very up to date, and because of that, many times the efficacy of the decision making, because many times decision makers are basing their decision based on some of the data which is existing in these Excel files, that accuracy of that decision making also starts to decay pretty rapidly as these parameters starts to increase. In addition, what I'm showing here at the right corner in that box are some of the challenges which we see, for example, when organizations work with Excel files. One aspect which is that these Excel processes are extremely manual and they are quite error prone because of the very nature of the work which is involved. Many times there are teams of analysts which are extracting data, copying, pasting data from one file to another, and all that kind of adds into some of the manual errors and creeps into these processes. These processes are not scalable. It is not integrated to any of your information system. And though Excel is a great tool, it doesn't lend itself very easily to multi-user collaboration, kind of environment. As I was mentioning earlier, many of these Excel processes, they lack the enterprise quality checks and balances which are needed for, especially when you are trying to scale many of these applications or when you're trying to work with outside entities. So these are some of the problem areas which we typically see when we work with large organizations. And this is where Boardwalk can help organizations because of its unique value proposition. So what with Boardwalk happens is, once you implement your Excel processes on Boardwalk, we totally eliminate the need for any manual activities which you need to do. And straight off the bat, at least you can expect some kind of productivity gain, at least in the range of 20%. Many times in many of our processes, we have seen 50, 60, 80% productivity gains. Then the next aspect of Boardwalk is that you will be able to collaborate not only within your enterprise, but also outside with outside enterprise entities. For example, as I was mentioning earlier, with your suppliers, contract manufacturers, etc. And you also get to see a real-time visibility in your Excel processes without the need to email these files or upload these files on some SharePoint or any other document management system. Thirdly, because we connect, so with Boardwalk what happens is, and we'll talk about it in a little more detail in my next section of the presentation, is we are able to liberate your data from your Excel file. So your data resides in the Boardwalk server, and because of that, you get aspects of a relational database, which is persistence of data, scalability. There's a high trust in the data because everyone is working with the latest version. You're no longer worried about if you have the latest version of the file, and the security aspects associated with that. And finally, we are able to connect your Excel-based process to your enterprise information system. And as information evolves on changes in different corners of your enterprise, you are no longer scrambling to keep pace with that. With a click of a button, you can pull those information into an Excel spreadsheet, and that again lends itself to a better decision making, and you get to see the latest data in your Excel spreadsheet itself. Now, so these are some of the challenges which we see, which are unique not only to any specific industry or vertical, but across the industries, having worked with multiple organizations in very disparate areas. Now, with that, let me come to a more special use case for apparel. So what we have seen in apparel industry, again, having worked with many of the leading apparel organizations, is that Excel continues to be the lingua franca, especially for business users in the apparel industry. And there are certain drivers or the characteristics of apparel industry which kind of necessitates that. So for example, what we see is that the typical nature of apparel industry is that it's an extremely distributed team. You need to work with multiple roles. Say, for example, you need to collaborate with merchant, designer, sourcing managers, vendors, etc. And especially many times these are not only different departments within the organization, but they are also spread across to other organizations or entities. And when you're trying to exchange information between different entities spread across 2 or 3 different organizations, Excel by default becomes the vehicle for that information exchange. The second aspect is that there are large teams which you need to collaborate with, and again the seasonality of the nature of this particular business kind of where you need to align different kinds of goals. For example, your financial goals, your operational goals, to your brand and line management goals, etc. Thirdly, you deal with tens of thousands of SKUs, and because of the nature of the business, there is a continuous new product introduction which needs to happen. So, for example, every season you need to introduce new products, you need to phase out certain products. And again, Excel, because of the very ease of flexibility which is provided, where you can add rows, columns, etc., business users tend to like using Excel in such scenario. Another aspect which we have also seen is that a large community of apparel industry is based in continents like Asia and Latin America, where you typically have limited internet connectivity and bandwidth. And because Excel offers this very unique opportunity to have the application in an offline mode, that becomes again quite a bit of a help to such entities who are working in these regions. And finally, the global team and the need to work with large data set, that kind of has resulted in low adoption of web-based technologies. And these are some of the drivers why in apparel industry we see still a large proliferation of Excel-based applications which are going. In addition to this, there is a constant churn in the industry. There are impacts because of technological changes, where the business model is continuously evolving. And because of all these, Excel continues to dominate in many areas of the apparel industry. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over the session to our guest speaker, Miguel, who will be sharing his experience of Boardwalk and how Levi's, some of the processes which they have implemented, and he will talk about some of the challenges which he faced before implementing Boardwalk, and how with Boardwalk Levi's was able to overcome many of the issues which I have highlighted in this part of my presentation. So I'll hand it over to you, Miguel.
Okay, thank you, Vivek. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Today I am here to share the experience with Boardwalk and how it is used to facilitate the collaboration process within Levi Strauss and Company. So let me just give an introduction of the company. The company was founded in 1853, which is 163 years old. It is primarily in the clothing industry. The brands that we carry are Levi's, Dockers, Denizen, and Signature by Levi Strauss and Company. The headquarters is located in San Francisco, and the company has approximately 2,800 stores, including franchised, O&O, and shop-in-shop. The number of employees is around 12,500 employees worldwide. So Levi Strauss and Company started using Boardwalk some 8 years ago. So we started with two major applications for demand planning and for supply planning. Since then, we have made several enhancements along the way, and we have added 3 applications with the new application engine and the universal template. We have the production order collaboration tool, which I will speak to next. A tool called Capacity Planning Tool is where we manage and plan with the vendor's manufacturing capacity. The raw material tool is an application where we track all the raw material liabilities that we incur from the manufacturing vendors. And then we have a Levi's super user team that have been trained on the Boardwalk maintenance and administration of the application. So Levi's process is centered on the exchange of information between the resource planners in the United States and the sourcing managers located in several countries where we source production. So the sourcing managers in turn work directly with our vendors to capture and negotiate the production capacity and schedules. The collaboration process follows a published monthly calendar where each team members have activities with specific deadlines by week. The information is handed off from one member to another, and as you can see in week 1, the resource planners generate a consolidated set of reports to perform their variance analysis. And then in week 2, the resource planners will submit their production order requisitions to the sourcing managers in the field. In week 3, the resource planners, the sourcing managers, and the sourcing suppliers, who are our vendors, will interact with each other to load level the production capacity and propose a production schedule. This is an iterative process until a tentative plan is put in place. And finally, in week 4 or 5, the sourcing managers will input the data collected and agreed upon with the vendors and submit the production confirmation back to the sourcing planners for review. So in summary, week 1, we see what we need. Week 2, this is the product I need and how much I need and by when. In week 3, we figure out what the vendors can do based on what was requested. And weeks 4 and 5, they send back the confirmation. The production order management is done via Excel templates. And it involves exchanging several key informations amongst the resource planners, the sourcing manager, and the vendors. Some of the information are related to the capacity for each vendor, some of the trigger dates, such as PO issue date, fabric exit mill dates, cut dates, and so forth. This process, we have a team of around 10 resource planners, about 70 resource managers, sourcing managers, and they are spread out in different countries, and they interact with a pool of over 100 vendors. that they can choose from around the world. So what are the challenges that Levi is faced with this process? First and foremost is the file sharing issues. 8 years ago, we started with around 150 users and trying to update this information. Today, we have about half of that. And to facilitate the process, the business had a single file saved on the SharePoint site. This single file had thousands of rows of data, and these users were trying to get their share of data updated. So to control the collaboration process, the business adopted a procedure where the first person who could get the file and wanted to update their slice of data would then check out that file so that their data would not get lost. And then after finishing his or her updates, the person would then check in to release the file for the next person. Well, this concept was great, but soon they realized that this process did not work. So why? Failing to check out could mean that all of someone's work will be overlaid by the next person who did remember to check the file out. And there was no way to enforce a checkout or remind the users to do so. On the flip side, failing to check in kept colleagues from being able to access the single file and do their work. So people would step away from their work and go about doing other tasks and totally forget to check in the file. So this scenario resulted in low productivity, low efficiency in their process. People were working with their entire data set versus just their own data. One user working on their data might have accidentally changed or deleted someone else's data without even knowing that, and then exposing all the data in the file to their errors. People who were locked out by someone else also could not update the file until someone would email that person to check in that file. And checking in the file could take between hours to 1 day because a person could be on the opposite side of the world, and in worst case scenario, it could take up to 3 days if that happened on a Friday or weekend or even a holiday in their country. So as I mentioned in my previous slide, the production collaboration process is driven by a monthly calendar cadence with weekly activities. And so with that many users, it could take that person a couple of weeks before they could input their updates and missing their deadlines. Another key issue was related to data integrity and data consistency issues. So most entries here are not keyed in by the sourcing managers, but the information are copied from the vendors and pasted in, thus evading data validation and allowing that bad entries into the worksheet. And some critical data are required for the process, and the absence of these data causes even further delays. Again, low productivity and low efficiency. This collaboration process needed 2 full-time super users to fix the data that was incorrect, fix the formatting, and filling in the missing data on behalf of the resource planners and the sourcing managers, almost defeating the purpose of streamlining this collaboration process. So how did Boardwalk overcome? How did Boardwalk help overcome these challenges and problems? Having the entire data stored in a more robust environment provided added benefits. It removes the need to break out the files to different planners and consolidate them again for aggregation later. The table, row, and cell level locking is handled by the database. It reduces the risk of corrupting a single file saved on the SharePoint and losing all the data. The number of rows in their Excel template today are much smaller than the entire data set, resulting in a smaller file size saved on their laptops. So the majority of our sourcing managers operate in third world countries where internet infrastructure is subpar compared to ours. So by reducing the file size versus the need to download the entire data set from the SharePoint is a big plus. Each user only accesses their own information, and each user, depending on their role, whether they are a resource planner or a sourcing manager, will only be able to update their data. Users no longer need to search for their slice of data in the entire data set, thus increasing productivity. Another factor is that there is no risk of tampering with or removing other people's data. Users are now accountable for their own data, and the managers can view a superset of the data for the resource planners working under his or her supervision. Users no longer need to wait for other users to finish updating the data, thus increasing efficiency. They can simply download their slice of data at any point in time or submit their changes at their convenience or needs. The users can work offline without being connected to the corporate network, which is a big advantage. The sourcing managers often visit the vendor's facility to manage the production planning face-to-face. So as long as the vendor have internet connection, they can either download the data or submit their updates right at the factory location. Data integrity and data consistency through business validation. Boardwalk template has built-in business validations to ensure data integrity, such as validating the date formats, numeric formats, mandatory fields, and it can ensure data consistency by allowing only a certain set of values from a list to be entered, and it ensures that the columns with formulas are always the same. Sourcing managers can simply copy and paste data provided by the vendors into the merge sheet, which has the same layout as the main data sheet. And then the merge function validates the data, refusing to accept any acceptance until all the data is validated and all mandatory fields are present. And the same validation process is performed upon submitting the data to the server. So it eliminates the need for super users to perform data scrubbing and data cleansing so they can focus on the business collaboration process itself. We have over 40,000 product codes that need to be validated and have the attributes displayed in the template. So in order to enable that feature, we have a daily integration process between our ERP and Boardwalk. This eliminates the need to rekey all the product codes in Boardwalk and keeps data up to date. This integration process is done via batch processing at off business hours. Boardwalk data is used for other downstream applications, either for reporting or as an input for further processing. Boardwalk provides login security for each user to download and submit their data, and the database is also in a secured environment that is backed up on a daily basis. On the change management side, Boardwalk has built-in facilities for audit trails at the table, row, and cell level. And besides the audit trail, we have used the audit trails to uncover bugs in the template and also flaws in our business process by understanding how the data flowed and how it got changed. One time we also used the audit trail feature for data recovery because the user wanted to roll back their data. Boardwalk provides several built-in modules which can be used over and over again. Every new application can use the same standard built-in features, resulting in the same look and feel of the template. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. and custom macros can be easily adapted within Boardwalk templates. Boardwalk has come a long ways from 8 years ago, and with the new application engine 4.0 and the newest universal template, it has allowed Levi's to prototype new business models significantly faster than before. The ongoing changes in the business process can easily be adapted with the newer version of Boardwalk. Training on the new universal templates allowed us to become more self-sufficient, and development efforts is a matter of weeks versus months. So in summary, we let Boardwalk handle the Excel interaction with the users. Excel is a tool that users are familiar with, and this helps increase the process adoption rate. The ability to collaborate offline and remotely with team members and business partners with only your data set is a big plus. The agility of prototyping and the flexibility of making changes to the template helps support the business process changes. And ultimately, we want to maximize our productivity and minimize the inefficiencies in the process. So with that, I want to revert the session back to Vivek.
Thanks, Miguel. That was quite insightful. So before I dive into the demo, what I quickly wanted to do was, cover some of the other aspects of the tool, and then we can talk about, the demo and how, say, for example, how Boardwalk works. So let me go ahead and say, so Miguel primarily covered, certain portions of the production order management piece. For the application apparel industry, we have a whole portfolio of applications which we have built. So my next slide here kind of speaks to some of the applications which we have built using our product, which ranges from the line connection plan to drop and key plan, VMI, demand management, supply planning, raw material planning, etc. So there's a whole portfolio of applications which have been built using our product, so to speak. And we also see that today, we have a lot of attendees who are not from apparel industry, and for them, I also wanted to highlight this, that apart from apparel industry, we have built and done a lot of work in other areas which can range from financial planning to supply chain management and so on. So this slide here kind of speaks to across the industry work which we have done in the sales value chain. For example, we have done a lot of work in the areas of pricing, margin management, sales unit forecasting, revenue forecasting, etc. And similarly, in the operations value chain too, we have done a lot of work building multiple applications ranging from code management system, to component buffer process, inventory management, and so on. So with this kind of a broad overlay, let me now dive into a little more detail, kind of lift the hood and explain to you how Boardwalk as a technology works. So, and the next few slides are kind of geared towards providing you a 50,000 feet view of the technology. So what I'm showing here on my screen right now is one sample Boardwalk template. I'm going to call it, say, for example, a sales rep template. On my left of my screen, there is another Boardwalk template, which I'm going to call the sales manager template. Now, as you can see, both these templates are Excel file, and Boardwalk uses Excel as the front end. What we also do is we connect your Excel spreadsheet to the some kind of a relational database. It can be either Oracle or Microsoft SQL. And what happens, because we are able to liberate the data from your Excel file, is that now the data resides in the Boardwalk database rather than residing on the server. And there are certain advantages which accrue to you straight off the bat because of this. As Miguel was mentioning earlier in his presentation, that many times in absence of a tool like Boardwalk, people need to carry hundreds of thousands of records in their Excel spreadsheet because there is no container where they can store that information. with Boardwalk, there could be millions of records which are residing in the database, and we have tools and techniques where we can slice and dice this information and present it to the end user in the form and the format in which it is required. So, for example, if you look at the sales rep template, you see that all the records which are present in the rep template belong to rep 1 here. While if you look at the sales manager template, you see that not only rep 1 records are there, but also other reps which are reporting to this particular manager, those records are present here. So these are some of the access capability tools which we can bring into your process. In addition to that, you also see that there are certain columns which are grayed out. These columns can become read-only for one user, it can become editable for another user, and they can be totally absent from a third user's template. And that again adds to the security, confidentiality of information. You don't have to every time create a new file or delete certain columns or rows when you are sharing that information. All that is taken care of by the basic feature functionality of the tool itself. Now, in addition to that, with Boardwalk, what happens is because we use Excel as a front end, and as Miguel was mentioning earlier, you get this added capability where you can work in an offline mode. And once you work in an offline mode, so for example, in this particular use case, you can very easily imagine the sales rep is either traveling or is at a customer location where he or she may not have access to the internet. But based on the customer meeting, they can change their forecasting numbers, do some kind of impact analysis, see how it is changing their plan versus actual numbers, or change the pricing information, see what impact it has on the gross margin or the total revenue. And once they are comfortable with the change which they have done, at that point in time, they can go ahead and hit the submit button. And what the submit does is, it takes the data, or rather the cells which you have updated in your Excel template, and only those cells get compressed and traverses over the network to the Boardwalk database. And then they are now available for other users, provided they have access to that particular data. They can hit their refresh button and see those changes seamlessly flowing into their template. Now here I am showing the collaboration between two users, but you can very easily imagine hundreds or even thousands of users who are participating in this process. As each one of them is making edits and submitting their data, other people almost in real time can see those changes flowing into their template. Now, just like we can pull information from individual templates, we can also pull information from other systems and applications. So what I'm showing here at the bottom of my screen is that, say for example, data getting linked to, say for example, in this particular use case, you can imagine the opportunity details can be coming in from some CRM tool like Salesforce, or the product related information is coming in from, say, your item master table in ERP. The pricing information is coming in from Hyperion, and all that is getting assembled and collated in the back end. And with a click of a button, you can see those changes seamlessly flowing into your template. Now, some of the advantages which accrues to you because of Boardwalk is that you have totally eliminated the need to email the file. There is no need to upload the file on some SharePoint or any kind of document management system. In addition to that, you get to see a real-time updates. You're no longer worried about if people have the latest version. You don't need to do any manual ETL operation or cutting pasting of the data. And everyone is working with the latest set of information. And because we are using Excel as the front end, you can work in an offline mode. You can do your what-if analysis before you are ready to submit that data. In addition to this, what we also do many times with many of our customers is that we can even publish this data to any kind of reporting tool. For example, if you need to do some kind of analytics in tools like Tableau, etc. Just like we can link with ERP CRM applications, we can also link with reporting tools, and you can either push these data for analytics to your business warehouses or reporting tools, or you can leverage many times Boardwalk reporting capabilities as well to do analytics. Now with this, let me very quickly cover a couple of additional aspects of the tool before I dive into the demo. So because Boardwalk is a cell version database, we are able to collect the history of the cell at its most granular level. So for example, if you click on any cell in your template and you click on the cell history button, what it will do for you is it will fetch the record of and the value of that individual cell as it has evolved over a period of time. So for example, what I'm showing here is that the initial value was, say, 147,500, and then it got updated to, say, 155,000, 165,000, and so on. And we not only capture the value updates, we also capture any formula changes which are done on, say, for example, in your template. In addition to that, we also capture who updated those values. So you have the login credential of the people who are updating this information. This becomes extremely handy in a multi-user scenario where multiple people are editing these changes. You will always find out who has made these changes. And in addition to that, we also capture the date and the timestamp of when these changes were done and any comments which the user has entered when they were making these changes. So what happens is, because of this unique, cell version database, you get a very strong audit trail of all the updates which are happening either by users or many times even by other applications. Say, for example, if certain cells or records are getting updated by an integration job, you will come to know that, hey, this particular record or this particular cell got updated by the change which happened in the ERP system. Now, in addition to this, what this does is, because there is a total footprint of the changes which is happening, it drives a lot of accountability into the process. What we have seen working with many of our customers is that, especially when they are dealing with external entities, this drives a lot of accountability into the process. Many times, say for example, we did one code management application with Apple where they were dealing with Foxconn, and Foxconn was submitting, say for example, certain codes to Apple on a monthly basis, and you can imagine there were 200 columns with hundreds of thousands of rows, and if you change the value of one component from 34 cents to 37 cents, the supply managers will not even notice that change. With Boardwalk, we are able to highlight the changes which happen as you refresh your template, and I'll be showing some of these aspects in my demo a little later. Now, very quickly moving on, because we are a cell version database, what we can also allow, what it allows you to do is, say for example, you can think of the record in your Excel file as an assembly of cells, and these sources of these cells can be varying. Say for example, the product related information can be coming in from your ERP or CRM tools. The transaction details can be coming in from your actual tables in ERP, while certain aspects of the record could be user entered. And this is made possible only because of the fact that we are a cell version database, and other tools and applications which are existing in the market will not be able to very easily integrate disparate sources and connect it to your enterprise information system because of this. So with that now, let me dive into the next section of our session today, which is a live demo of the Boardwalk application engine. So before I dive into the demo, let me very quickly walk you through, say for example, this slide here kind of, or this image here captures some of the applications which we have built in line planning solution with Boardwalk. As you can see, we have covered areas of costing, manufacturing costing, supply costing. We have done a lot of work in planning, in the business planning, line planning, where you need to create an even sourcing plan, things like CPFR, etc. For the purpose of today's demo, in the interest of the time, I will be covering mostly the production commit space, where I will be showing you different roles. For example, we will have a merchant role and a couple of vendors who are interacting for this particular process. We can imagine that the merchant could be sitting here in US, while one vendor could be sitting there in China. The second vendor could be sitting somewhere, say in Singapore, etc. And then you will see how easy it is to collaborate using Boardwalk as a tool. Now, the way typically our templates are organized, so if you look at here, the top few rows is what we call the header section, where you have some of our key buttons. For example, you see the submit button here. As I was mentioning earlier, typically you use submit to push your data from your template to the Boardwalk database. Then you have your refresh button, which is used to pull the information from the Boardwalk database into your template. And the download button is generally used when for the first time you are trying to download the data into your template. And then you have the features of the history, the cell history which I was talking about. We also have features of row and table history where if you want to see how that individual record has changed or how the entire sheet has changed over a period of time, you can go ahead and do that. Then we have other utilities like, say, for example, if you need to attach documents to your cells or records, you can go ahead and do that. So in this particular template, you see that I have logged in currently as a merchant, and then what you also see that there are certain sections of the spreadsheet which are grayed out. Now these can become read-only. For example, the style-related information can be coming in from your PLM tool, while there are other sections which the user can go ahead and edit. Now you also see that as a merchant, I have the ability to go ahead and change the vendor. So for example, I can change this one from vendor 1 to vendor 2, while when I will switch role and I will log in as, say, for example, in a vendor role, you will see that many of these columns will be grayed out. They can be read-only column for me. So this is how you start baking in enterprise quality checks and balances, where you are slicing and dicing the information depending on what role the user is playing in the process. In addition to this, you also see that in the merchant template, I have access to multiple vendors whom I am managing. And you also see, say, for example, there is a column here, the purchase order priority column, which only the merchant can see. When I will log in as the vendor in the vendor role, you will see that this column will not be present in, so for example, in the vendor role. So these are some of the ways where you are no longer able to, you will need to, every time cut or delete the columns and create separate files. You will see how seamlessly with Boardwalk, based on your role and login credential, we can, control access to the information which people are looking at. So now let me switch role and let me open another master file and show you how typically a user gets initiated into a process for the first time. So when the user gets initiated into Boardwalk, they need access to the master template. Now this is just a shell file with no record here, as you can see, with a single sheet with a few buttons here. For the first time when the user has access to this particular template, say for example the vendor, what they need to do is they need to click on this download button. Once they click on this download button, it runs certain checks on your machine. These are just to ensure that what are the prerequisites which are needed for Boardwalk to function are there. For example, it looks for internet connectivity, some of the office libraries, etc. In my case, it is telling me that I'm good to download, so I'll go ahead and click on continue to download. Once I do that, then my login screen pops up. Now, many times with many of our customers, we enable features like single sign-on, where we can directly connect to and leverage your Active Directory or LDAP directory for user authentication, bypassing this. In this particular instance, let me log in, say for example, as vendor 1, and let me enter my password. Now, once I click OK, then based on the login credentials which I entered, it'll hit the Boardwalk server, verify me as a user, and see what data I have access to. And you'll see that once it downloads the data, it will. I as vendor 1, I only have access to those records where, say for example, the vendor is vendor 1. I do not have access to vendor 2 or vendor 3 or other vendors which are reporting or participating in this process. Now, again here, say for example, if I want to change this vendor column, it will not allow me to do that. So those again are the things which you can bake in depending on what process requirements are. Let me very quickly also download one more time another template. This time I will be using, say for example, the vendor 2 role. But again, let me log in as vendor 2 now. And I click OK. Now this time you will see that once I'm logging in as vendor 2, then only those records belonging to, say for example, vendor 2 will be fetched into my template. And if you recall the purchase order priority column, which was present in the merchant column. So if I come here to column AG, you see that the purchase order priority column is no longer present for this particular vendor, while certain columns could be present for certain users depending on what their requirements are. Now, once you have these files or the templates downloaded, just like a normal Excel file, you can go ahead and save these in your local machine and start working. So now let me very quickly show you how easy it is to start collaborating using Boardwalk. So once I have this file, say for example, I will go ahead and I will make the changes. For example, I as the vendor, I'm saying, hey, initially I had committed 4,700. Maybe, there are some issues with my factory. I may have to, bring it down to say 3,999. I'm just changing some numbers arbitrarily. And, if there are certain dependent cells, I can see what impact it is having. And once I have made the change, at that point in time, I will go ahead and hit this submit button here. And once I hit the submit button, I can enter certain comments which can provide, certain context to the user who are now looking at my change number. I can say, these are revised down numbers. Going to say factory issues, and I say okay. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing those cells which I had changed now into the Boardwalk server. Now it is telling me that, hey, the changes which were done by me as vendor 2, I have successfully submitted those changes. Now if I say, for example, go back to my merchant template here, and if I look at the value here, so I'm right now I switched hat. I'm now using my merchant template, and if I look at the committed quantity here for vendor 2, I see that this value is still 4,700, and it is because the merchant has not yet refreshed the template. So let me go ahead and click on this refresh button, and just to kind of refresh your memory, what this refresh button will do is it will pull the latest changes which were done by other users and bring it into my template. So let me go ahead and very quickly hit this refresh button. So once I do that, so it is asking me to now log in. So let me go ahead and log in as merchant and click OK. Now, once I click OK, now it is fetching the latest changes from the server into my template. Now it is telling me that my refresh is complete. So now if I come back to say, for example, my committed number here, you see that this number has now changed from 4,700 to 3,999. And if you see that, the cells which get updated, they get highlighted by this red tip here. So that especially when you are dealing with large amount of data, many times we can also color code these cells, or again, depending on the process, we can highlight certain rows which are getting updated every time when you are refreshing, because when you are dealing with large amount of data, it allows you to very quickly zero in on only those cells which have changed since the last time you have updated. And this is right now, again, for the purpose of this demo, I'm showing you the collaboration between, say, 2 users, but you can very easily imagine, multiple users who are participating in this process now. And without, the need to email the file, or without the need to upload the file, with click of a button, we are able to now exchange information in real time. And just like I'm pulling information, say, from other templates, say if an integration job runs in the back end, a new product line has been added, or multiple SKUs have been added, all those rows can get inserted into my template without the need for me to extract that data manually and copy paste in my template. Now very quickly, let me also show you the cell history feature which I was talking about. So for example, if you click on any cell, and then when you go ahead and hit on this cell history button here, you can choose how far back in time you want to go. So for example, you can choose a week, a month, a quarter, or you can even choose a custom time. So let me go ahead and choose a week and click OK. So once I do that, then the value of that individual cell, you see that it has now brought in a separate sheet, the value. So if you remember, I changed this value, the value which I was having was 4,700. I changed that value to 3,999, and it is telling me that this update was done by vendor 2, and this update was done at around 11:50 a.m. on 11th January, and this is the comment which I entered. So say for example, these are my revised down numbers. So you see now that there is a complete audit trail of all the updates which are happening in your template. You can click on any individual cell, or you can click on, say for example, highlight any row here, and once you highlight the row and click on the row history button, you can choose again how far back in time you want to go, for what columns you want to see the details, and click OK. It will fetch you the details of that individual row, or you can see the history of the entire table using our table history feature. Now, what this allows you to do is, because now your historical information along with your latest information in the templates are present and it is available to you at your fingertip, any kind of trend analysis and any kind of reporting which you want to do. So for example, if you want to see how your forecasting numbers have changed month over month, or how your pricing information has changed quarter over quarter, you can build all these trend reports, analytics very easily using Boardwalk. Or as I was mentioning earlier, you can export this to any business and intelligence tool or reporting tool, and then extract and see that information in those tools as well. So with this, I have come to an end of what I actually wanted to cover, and what I'm very quickly going to do is I'm going to hand over the session now to Heather to see if there are any questions for us on what we have shown so far.
Thanks, Vivek. We do have a lot of questions, so if we don't get to your questions by the end of the session, I will be sure to email you afterwards. So the first question is for Miguel. Miguel, how did Boardwalk impact your process or iteration? Do you have an example of a percent that the process time was reduced once Levi started using Boardwalk?
So let me just see if I understood the question. The question is in terms of efficiency gains and productivity gains, how much we gain? Is that the question?
Yes. I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Well, the process in itself, we had significant gain in productivity because the time that we spent trying to clean the data and sometimes reconstructing the data could take weeks. And now with all the business validations that are in process, we don't allow this to happen. So in my presentation where I showed the weekly activities for different team members, the users could not get their deliverables done because we spent so much time cleaning the data, reconstructing the data, and missing the deadlines. Now we can follow the calendar because everybody now has their share of data and they are accountable for their data. So it's hard to quantify in terms of percentages gained, but today we are able to have a monthly calendar that we follow, and we have the users accountable for their data.
Okay, great. Thanks, Miguel. The next question is for you, Miguel. Like most, we use Excel a lot for data collaboration, and we spend a lot of time reviewing the changes in the data to make sure there aren't any errors. Did Boardwalk help with your review efforts?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like I said, Boardwalk has already built in business validations which you can choose to enforce or not. You can also build some customized business validations, and we have done this in our templates where we go after specific attributes of the product to make sure that the data is consistent. So that feature is all modularized, and you can choose to enable or disable the feature. So yes, the data integrity piece was of a big help in the collaboration process.
Okay. The next question is for you, Miguel, as well. How do you compare Boardwalk production planning tool to your ERP?
Well, they are a totally different category. The ERP is a comprehensive, very robust, and very transaction-oriented specific application for different departments, whereas the Boardwalk application tool is more of a collaboration process isolated to a specific business process. So they are, one does not replace the other, but it certainly helps facilitate the process where the ERP sometimes either lacks or is not well fit for the process.
Okay, great. We have a lot of questions. The next one is for you, Miguel, as well. How easy is it to make changes to the process? Our business model is always changing, and since you've made processes on your own, how easy is it to make process or changes to the process once you're using the Boardwalk product?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So compared to 8 years ago, it's day and night. 8 years ago, Boardwalk was in its infancy, and we grew with Boardwalk, and today Boardwalk has a new application engine 4.0 with the universal templates. This technology has allowed us to keep up with the constant and for a good reason needed business process changes, and we can easily prototype and make changes in a matter of weeks. So compare that to 8 years ago, we would spend months and almost a year to develop a new application, and then months to make changes, testing. Today with the new application engine and the universal template, it's very quick. It's a matter of weeks.
Okay, great. And then, Vivek, I have two questions for you. These are two technical questions. Does Boardwalk need an addition in Excel to work? Which is the first question.
So, sorry, what is the question? Does Boardwalk need?
Does it need an addition in Excel to work?
I'm not sure I understand the question very well. So Boardwalk needs Excel as a user interface. Now if the question is, can we only work with Excel? The answer is no. We are also doing work with other, say for example, Google Docs, and not many times, a couple of times we have also had developed some web browser interface based applications. So I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly, but if the question is about like almost 90-95% of our implementation do leverage Excel as the front end, but the technology itself is not limited by using Excel as the front end. We can very easily use a browser or say for example Google Docs or any other interface too.
Okay. The second part of the question is it possible to have formulas in the template that, for instance, calculate quantities based on a particular BOM for a product or based on conception dates for a list of products?
Yes, so you can definitely leverage the formulas in Excel. In fact, in most of our implementations, and as most of the Excel users, Excel has a very robust calculation engine. So, and one of the advantages of using Excel is that you as a business user can capture that logic and build that formula yourself rather than either trying to code that in the middle layer or somewhere in your database. And typically, say for example, if your business evolves, if the logic changes, provided you have access, so we have certain roles. So if you have the administrative access, you can go ahead and using that administrative login, also modify these formula, make changes to these formulae as your business evolves. So yes, you can leverage the formula capabilities of Excel, and that is one of the main reasons why many times, because we are able to capture the business logic in Excel formula, one of the reasons why people tend to gravitate towards using Excel is because of its very robust and highly advanced calculation engine.
Okay, great. So it looks like we answered that. Great. So I believe that's all we have time for, and if I didn't get to your question, I will email you right after this session. I do want to take time to thank Miguel for hosting with us today. We really appreciate it. It's been really nice. And if you have any questions or would like more information on Boardwalk Tech products, please feel free to reach out to us at info@boardwalktech.com. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Heather.